Now let's take a look at preparing the vision, roadmap, and program backlog. First, let's talk about the vision. Why do we have to have a vision? Well, we're far less dependent, as the manifesto noted, on documents, really, to control product development. They're unwieldy anyway. They're hard to read. They get big and fat. They're hard to keep current. With less of a dependence on documents, we're going to depend more on the ability to interact. In the book Switch, which is a really fun book on change management, how to change things when change is hard, strongly recommended. I found this little vignette, which is, they say a vision is a postcard from the future, okay? Well, what is the nature of that postcard? Aspirational, yet realistic and achievable. It would be fun to go on that journey with you. That would be a cool destination. Motivational enough to engage me to join that journey. And what's the result of that? The teams start thinking about how to apply their strengths in order to get there. So the value of the vision is creating a destination that's interesting enough that people will join me, and then they're challenged in their thinking to say, okay, there's the destination, how are we going to get there? So it provides a longer-term context. It's not just this sprint or this next short period or even this PI. It can live much longer than that. It answers a number of key questions. How will our future solution solve the larger customer problems? Yeah, what do we mean to do with this? What problems are we going to solve? If it's an important solution, does it differentiate us? Does it need to? Will it be easy for us to articulate our value proposition versus that of a competitor? And what's the context that we're evolving in? How is our users' environment changing? Are they in the process of cloud hosting all their applications as well? Or are they still largely enterprise class software running on local servers behind their firewall? Is that going to evolve? How does that affect us? What is our business context? What problems do we have in the business? And how must we evolve to a future state? All of those things go together to help us formulate the vision. And for those of you who are interested in a fun little vision, there's a John Deere Vision video at this URL right here. You can see it. I won't read it to you. It's really neat. It's maybe 5 or 7 minutes long. And it's really a portfolio level vision. It shows how they think about the work at Deere. And it shows you, combines and tractors and farming data operations and how to them that's a holistic vision of the future. So we always play that in class. It's really well done, and it just kind of is aspirational. It gives you an idea of what farming in the future should look like, and that's exactly their goal. So feel free to take advantage, and you can pause now if you want and try that and come back to us about 5 or 6 minutes. You'll have a little better idea of what we mean by vision. So we need to prepare the solution in vision, and that's the thing that's going to communicate our strategic intent, and that's why we use the little binoculars to indicate it. Where are we headed? What problem does it solve? What features and benefits does it provide? So now we trigger directly into the meat. It's great to have these generic terms about it's going to work in this area, we're going to solve this problem in this industry. Well, tell me specifically, what are the features and benefits? And by the way, who is my user? Who's going to use that system? I need to know who those features and benefits are. And lest we forget, what about all the non-functional requirements? What's the performance requirement? We talked a little bit about reliability. Is it 2 nines and a 7? Is it 3 nines? Is it 4 nines? Well, it kind of depends, right? If that's an infusion pump, that's going to be hooked to patients, that's one level of reliability. If it's a safe website, it's something different. We wouldn't want to invest what those who build infusion pumps invest to achieve their 4 to 5 nines of reliability. It would make the whole process uneconomical. And even the infusion pumps probably may or may not, depending upon the nature of its use, may or may not be driven to that next level, that 5th nine. What platforms do we support? Do we run on Android or not? Is our website responsive to mobile platforms and iPads and smaller devices or not? Does it need to be? Well, gosh, we need to understand that. I mean, how else would we be able to build a solution that does or doesn't do that thing if we don't describe what that thing is? A variety of formats for this, and you can pick one. Once upon a time, I don't know if they still do it, but one of the big SaaS companies, each PI would create a data sheet, and that was pretty cool. So here's a PI, and here's where we are here, and they'd say, here's my data sheet. We're going to be able to do this. And if you've ever written a data sheet, you have to be able to define some things, the specific performance. You might try kind of a preliminary press release. Press release says, who's going to buy it and what are they going to do with it and what are my non-functional requirements and what are the features and benefits of that system. It doesn't matter how you do it. You could create what you might think of as a relatively traditional vision document. No problem with that. If you have to communicate to a lot of people, then you probably want to do that. Otherwise, frankly, how would they know? More common for us, and we'll see this in the future sections, is this what we call these rolling wave briefings, right? The ability, once we're on an art, and once we have cadence, and once we have face-to-face planning, we have a new ability, and that is the ability for the right people to communicate with the right people at the right point in time. So we mostly see this, but we see other formats as well. Format doesn't matter so much as the fact that you have one and you constantly communicate it. Let's talk a little bit about a roadmap. So we've experimented with, we're an agile team, we're running Scrum, and we only know what we can do in the next 2 weeks. We know that doesn't fly. We've experimented, so let's go to the extreme case here. I'll just use my pen. We've experimented with, we're agile, and we'll ship this in 2 weeks and we don't know anything else. That doesn't really work. We've experimented with, I'll go out here, 1 year from now, we're going to build that big fat software requirement specification and all 80 pages are going to be deployed. We've experimented with that. Neither of those work. So lean is not a law of extremes. Lean is a law of a U-curve optimization, right? Where is the best economic trade-offs? Well, we think those economic trade-offs tend to happen in here. And as opposed to a 2-week commitment, we're pretty comfortable with 8 to 12. Why? Because we don't make the commitments for the teams. They commit back to us. Less comfortable with these. Why? Because we probably didn't plan them. Now, there's quite a story in here about when you convert to this type of thinking and you get to the point where you have a committed upcoming PI and you have the ability to have at least a rough forecast for the others. And you notice we only put 3 on here. Well, I could have drawn 6, but what would that imply? It would imply that my forecast stretches out for years. Not to say that there aren't situations where we need a roadmap that ventures over years. Building a new automobile, building a new combine, I'm pretty sure we don't just start out every January and say this car is going to look like this next year. However, in terms of any fidelity with respect to the features and the capabilities of that system, there we have to be really careful. We want to be fairly tidy and we want to stay committed to that which we really planned. The rest of this is largely unplanned. So it's our intent, for sure, kind of a plan of intent, but we can't necessarily count on those, and the reason is something new might happen. So I want to take a second to talk about a slightly more interesting discussion. I talked earlier about backlogs and queues, and I said, are they the same? Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's have that debate right now. Think about this for a second. When, if ever, is a roadmap a queue? So maybe you're sitting with somebody or it's just a mental thought experiment. Well, let's think about it this way. On the prior page, how long might it take to deliver a new, high-priority, unanticipated feature? So let's look at it. Let's go back. So I'm marching along in time, along here, and I say, oh, I've discovered a new feature, and I really want to do it. Well, how long would it take? Well, I can't do it here unless I disturb the system. So if I've done a poor job of planning, okay, and I can always adapt to that. I can, scramble these eggs a little bit, but far better if I don't. Far better if I say, let's leave this set of commitments alone, because after all, that's committed. That means I can have that feature here. So now I have basically a known wait time, okay? So I'm somewhere in the middle here, and I don't know what these lengths are, but let's just say for the argument, this is 8 weeks, and this is 8 weeks. Well, I don't know where I am, so it might be as long as 16 weeks before I get it. It might be as short as 6. So the average is going to be about 12 weeks. Now, I can't animate this the way right now I would like to, but let me just pretend for a second that this is the case. All these features are committed. Great. Everybody feels really good. Well, I love your roadmap. It's good to see 3 PIs of high fidelity planning. You guys are so agile. It's awesome. I couldn't be happier with the fact that you've given me this high fidelity roadmap. That's day 1. Day 11, hey guys, I need a new feature. When can we do that? Sorry, boss. Looks like, what? I have to wait 10, 20, 30 weeks, over a half of a year? No, 38? 40 weeks? I have to wait 10, 20, 30, 40 weeks to get my new feature? You guys are crazy. I thought you were agile. I thought that you would welcome changing requirements even late in development. Well, you can't have it both ways. So what makes a roadmap or a backlog a queue? The answer is commitment. If all of these things are committed, that means that we have stakeholders that are dependent on them, and we can't just shuffle the queue, right? If all of these are committed to people, you know what it's like. A distributor's counting on that, a partner's counting on that. One key customer has based their renewal based upon this feature commitment that you've had in the future. If all these features are committed, the roadmap is a queue and it behaves just like a queue. So this guy here is the roadmap from hell because there's no way to get anything new on it in the near term. This one is a pretty decent roadmap because I can respond very quickly. So the difference between a backlog and a roadmap and a queue is simply whether or not the items that have been identified have been committed, and the length of the commitments is the length of the queue, and that in turn determines your time to market. So we need to get away from the notion that that's a really nice roadmap that you can see out a full year. Wow, it's really cool that you've identified all that work, and move to a notion that says we have a lot of notional ideas out here and we have a huge backlog of things that aren't even on the roadmap. And the reason is if we put them on the roadmap, people are going to start expecting them and then we won't be able to make change. So the ability to do some forecasting and planning, the ability to have near-term, high-fidelity commitments that the enterprise can build on, the ability to have flexibility in your longer-term commitments are absolutely key, and that's what makes an agile enterprise, one that can change its mind, add a new feature right here, add 3 new features right here, not take this one off the backlog. Yes, we said it was important, but we didn't pull it off the backlog because something new became more important and we got that committed and delivered. Therein lies the very essence of being a lean and agile enterprise and our simple slides about the solution roadmap and how we treat it. Okay, let's move into this thing we call the program backlog a little bit and talk more about what its components are. Well, let's simplify the case a little bit. We're going to fill our backlog with features. Let's just operate here at the program level. A feature is a service that fulfills a user needs. Pretty simple definition. It's an industry standard term. We didn't make it up. Those of us that we work with in marketing and product management are very familiar with that. You end users are familiar as well. You don't go to the automotive dealer and ask for a capability to put your finger on a button, and the longer you hold your finger on the button, the higher the window goes up, and you take your finger off the button and the window either stops or doesn't stop based upon whether you set the window in auto. You want power windows. The feature is power windows, much easier to describe. So I don't think we help ourselves a lot if we go to product management and say, you know, please define your thing as a user story, especially when we compound that with the fact that user stories are small. Features are big. Might take 10 or 20 or 30 stories to build a single feature. They're expressed as a phrase. Value is expressed in terms of features and benefits. Identify, prioritize, estimated, and maintained in the program backlog. So here you see a program backlog. And here you see the things are in it. In this case, from our buddies down at Ping Identity, multiplexing, standards-based, multi-factor authentication. There's a feature and there's the benefit for that. So feature and benefit is a simple and rational way to think about value delivery. Just like a user story, as a user I can do something for someone so that they get it, so that they get a personal benefit. This is a bigger stack. With multi-factor authentication, I can add to security and safety of my system. Features fill the program backlog. Features have benefits. Features deliver value that the benefits imply. And we manage all of that in the program backlog. Now, we talked about benefits. Let's also talk about acceptance criteria. The benefits tell us why we're doing what we're doing. They help us justify the feature implementation cost, and they give us a business perspective. When we're making scoping decisions, we can say, well, what's the benefit of that? Yes, you want this ability to have a rotating blog link to show that more than one recent blog is important, but what's the cost associated with that, and how will that affect the scope of the next implementation? Business benefits impact the economic prioritization. The higher the benefit, the higher the prioritization. That's independent of the cost of the feature, right? This feature may have a huge benefit and not cost very much. Another one may have a modest benefit and cost very little. Acceptance criteria are typically defined during program backlog refinement. So it's not just the feature, it's the feature, the benefit, and the acceptance criteria. So now I know how to get it into the system. I prioritize it in the program backlog, and now I know how to get it out. Build a solution that meets the acceptance criteria. Features also have to reflect functional and non-functional requirements. We have to be careful about saying, here's a new capability for my mobile device. Okay. Does it handle the full set of mobile functions for accessibility on that particular device? Does it meet the iPhone accessibility standards? If it doesn't, it's missing a significant part of its value, because if it doesn't meet its non-functional requirements, the whole device may not be particularly useful. Here's a simple example. We don't need to spend any time on it. We've been talking a little bit about single sign-on. Multi-factor authentication is a feature. What's the benefits? Enhanced user security. But acceptance criteria. What do you see here? You start to see the stories that the teams will use. That's probably a compound story right there. Ooh, user activity log, that's going to create one or more stories. So I'm seeding the implementation of the feature with the acceptance criteria. When it does all these things, I've accomplished that. So the acceptance criteria alone are real fertile ground for finding and discovering some of the stories that we're going to need to implement that. We're going to prioritize work, and it's going to be a pretty important exercise, and I want you to do this in a way that's meaningful for you. If you are in a current project context and features make sense to you for that, I'd like you to identify 3 features from your business context and describe each with a feature and a short phrase and a statement of benefits. Just 3, we don't have to do the entire backlog. So let's take 10 or 15 minutes to do that now. So you will lay out the feature, a phrase, right? A statement of benefits. We don't need to do acceptance criteria right now. We would do that, but only if we prioritize the work. But if we do lots of features and we do acceptance criteria for all of them, we don't do them, then we've invested in a bunch of acceptance criteria whip, a bunch of bullets we don't really need. So take a minute to do that, and when you're done, come back, because we're going to move forward to the next module, which is we're going to learn to prioritize work based upon cost of delay using a method called weighted shortest job first.